Welcome. From compliance headaches to team culture to scaling smart, Retail Revelations is about what really makes or breaks cannabis retail. We dive into the real truths about what can help or hinder license holders. I'm your host, Chelsea Mulligan, also known as the Dispensary Whisperer. With over 80 dispensaries opened, managed, or triaged, and more than 120 licenses touched nationwide, I specialize in turning chaos into compliance and growing teams that actually want to come to work. I've worked with everyone from regulators and FDA inspectors to legacy operators and court-appointed receivers. My roots are in operations and compliance, and I've had this honor of supporting teams, state regulators, and even international policymakers in creating systems that work. I thrive in helping operators to build businesses that are not just compliant, but human-centered and profitable. Shout out to Beer Bros Media for supporting this work and always being the voice of grounded, transparent cannabis news. Today, I am joined by Jennifer Makris, founder of Cannabis Cash Consultants, a longtime logistics pro and fierce advocate for smarter, safer cannabis financial operations. Jennifer, your background spans over 2 decades with Fortune 500 companies specializing in service-oriented sales, logistics, and consulting. Tell us what made you leap into cannabis and how did that end up in you founding Cannabis Cash Consultants?
Well, thank you, Chelsea. I'm so excited to be here with you. And yeah, I have a passion for retail operations and bridging that gap between operations and sales and being customer facing. That all being said, my cannabis journey, well, I've always been a productive consumer of cannabis. So it's ironic that this is now my professional path, and my family and I joke about it, and it couldn't be more fitting. And so my professional journey in the cannabis space started in 2017 and really went live in 2018 when cannabis legalized in the state of Florida. At the time, I was managing state banks and credit unions, which were the first to be open to banking cannabis-related businesses. And in my managing of those types of financial institutions, I was responsible for cash handling, secure transit of cash, vaulting of cash. And so I spoke a language that really translated and transitioned well into the cash intensive business that is cannabis. And so when I would have my banks come to me and say, hey, Jen, we're ready to move cannabis cash. Can your logistics company provide that? And at the time, and still to this day, a lot of those major carriers that are synonymous with Arbor Transportation, like the Brinks and the Loomises of the world, they still cannot transport cannabis cash. So no is not an option. It's let me figure out how. And so here I organically developed this network of cannabis-friendly financial institutions, cannabis-friendly cash and transit providers. And then once that cash was on site, how is the staff and the management physically touching the cash, all of those physical touch points in the cash process? And so I knew I had something specialized. I had something niche to really take to market. And that's how Cannabis Cash Consultants was actually born. It's through that experience in the managing of those financial institutions and figure out what was actually needed that transitioned over the cannabis space.
I love the excitement that I see in your face and your eyes when you talk about it, because you can truly see that you not only understand it, but you enjoy talking about it. You enjoy guiding people, educating, and like fixing those systems. And that's something I love to see.
100%. And thank you for calling that out, because I get excited and I love what I get to do. I get to educate people. I love to be on site with people, kind of evaluate what's going on. I know that's a question we have in a moment, but I love organically getting in the weeds with people, identifying those gaps, and really just educating and teaching them. On-site training and development is so key. And so being able to speak to my knowledge and my expertise and share it is something that does excite me. So thanks.
It's something we definitely have in common. So yes, love to see you light up. Okay, so you've built a niche, as we've discussed, helping cannabis license holders streamline and secure their cash operations from vault design to daily SOPs. What are the top cash management gaps you see, and how do you help clients close them without giving away all of your secrets?
Right, of course, because why would I let the cat out of the bag completely? But I really do see that in 3 categories. One is really physical security, so on-site visibility. Lack of standardization and processes. Like with major MSOs, you should be speaking the same language and having the same practices from a compliance and regulatory perspective, whether you're in Tampa, Florida, or Tacoma, Washington, right? Like you should be, your processes should be standardized. And that is a big gap that I see. And the third thing is really that visibility, whether it's visibility to cash flow, visibility to processes. So those three things are big gaps that I definitely see in the industry. And, really license holders underestimate the value of cash management. It's, let me get my property, let me get my product, let me get my license. It's all those other things ahead of the cash management practices. And so usually that's the 11th hour call before the store is ready to open. Hey, I need help with change orders, or I need help with devices to help automate the cash process, or what they don't even know, they don't know, that I get to speak to and identifying those gaps. So I can either work with people that from a blank canvas, right, from the licensing position, but they haven't even filed their license yet. So we help kind of write in some of those executive practices, or maybe that state requires full SOP documentation. So whatever that state calls for, because as you know, each state's a little different in regulatory and what they're required for licenses. And so I get to either from a blank canvas create that, or if you're already in operation, help untangle the mess or untangle the web of those gaps that occur, because they feel like, hey, as soon as I get my door open, then I'll come back to it. But oftentimes they get themselves in a little bit of trouble between that point and when they actually get the phone call to help out.
Well, I mean, there's so many times when license holders are like, oh, I'm going to come back to that. And it's, your list is 20 times larger than you think it is before you open a retail. And you don't often get back to half of those things that you're like, oh, I'll come back to. And I thought it was interesting you brought up the change orders, because I have found that a lot of the distressed assets I get brought into, change for the registers is almost not even a second thought. It's like a fifth thought. Mm-hmm. And then if you don't have change, people can't give you cash, and then people are frustrated, and now you're hindering your ability to take cash.
So let's unpack that, if you don't mind, because with change orders, oh goodness. So with change orders, there is the ability to get change orders from your armored transportation provider, or if your bank is nearby, if you have the fortunate access to being able to drive over there, which I do not recommend. I always tell people, like, please, and this is retail agnostic, right? So cannabis, your local convenience store, your restaurant, retail agnostic, but please, Mr. or Mrs. Manager or business owner, do not put that $40,000, that $400,000, whatever amount in cash in your vehicle or from your bank to your vehicle, every day at 2:00, right? So your life and your safety is really important to me. So let's put processes in place. But when you need change at that 11th hour, what do? You may not be able to source it from that transportation provider. So what I recommend, and this is kind of a free tidbit, right, is what kind of equipment can we deploy for that back office recycling of cash, to where that you as a front end bud tender or register operator, you are going to keep those larger denominations and you're going to put those for deposit, but you're going to in turn recycle those smaller denominations, so you're not always at the disparity of your bank or the transportation provider. You are able to in-house manage the cash cycle more appropriately, so that you are able to transact in cash. You are able to provide the appropriate amount of cash to your customers. And then, we won't even get into the cash. Well, we may get into cashless ATMs, but also the impact on your ATM on site if your cashless ATM goes down. So, you're riding the rails of that legality or that gray area when you are deploying that sort of gray area to be able to provide convenience for your customers. So you have to weigh the pros and the cons and the impact versus reaction of having those other sorts of solutions like cashless ATMs. So I could go down a whole rabbit hole about that, but all very important touch points in what I refer to as the cannabis cash ecosystem, right? It starts with cannabis-friendly financial institutions, and then that logistics piece, and then what type of hardware or equipment are we using on site to manage the cash and the physical touch points, and then deposit preparation, and that whole ecosystem all over again. I love educating about that and bridging the gap between those touch points in that cannabis cash ecosystem. So very important. And to your point, it's usually the fifth, sixth, and seventh thing that they think about. And now we've got some operational impact occurring by way of that not being proactive, and we're being more reactive. When you are reactive, it costs more. So let's set this plate clean and start from a great positioning point and starting point.
For all of the listeners listening, yes, it is 2025. However, what Jennifer explained about putting it in your car and driving it to the bank actually was what happened. I mean, from 2013 to 2015, I used to put anywhere from $50,000 to $80,000 in my car and go to multiple different banks for the company I was working for to deposit less than 10K. And that was not safe. It was not a good decision. And unfortunately, there are still companies that do that because they're not thinking out the safety piece of it and having a different avenue. So for all of you listening, that wasn't just a hypothetical. It actually happens, and was the way we all had to operate for many years, which was insanity within itself.
And your mom, right? You have a family, like those things, like we just don't think about that in the moment. We're doing our job, right? We got to do what we got to do. And accessibility to banking was not as accessible in 2014, 2015, like you just referenced. So we had to do what we had to do. And it's just so crazy, not just think about the safety aspect, but also the insurability of that cash. So God forbid something happens. See, you got in a vehicle accident. That you're probably under your personal insurance, not to mention the company insurance, but that cash, that missing money or whatever, that's no longer insured or covered should something occur. So you got to think about those things as well. And fortunately now we have more access to insurance policies that cover things like that, and banking, like I said, and transportation. So it's a lot more available, these safer procedures and practices than it was back, in the Wild West days when we were having to do that.
Truth.
Yeah.
So one of your core offerings is training retail teams to think beyond the register. Tell me why education and SOP structure is so critical to an industry that still deals with high risk financial handling every single day. And by the way, I love this question because you and I just so see eye to eye on this question.
We jived so hardcore on it, and we geeked out on it, actually, is really what it was. And we've kind of touched on it a little bit in our conversation thus far in this podcast, but your frontline team is your first and only line of defense when it comes to cash handling, from that point of exchange and change of custody from customer to cashier. And then, what happens after that? The bud tenders, they're not having proper training. So I said retail agnostic earlier, right? But cannabis is a lot more cash intensive than a lot of other businesses. And so being on site with with that staff and those managers, like train your trainer, I love, because there's nothing better than having that on-site training. And I'll go in and I'll evaluate what we call like a time and motion evaluation. Sometimes I do this complimentary as part of an initial evaluation of processes, and kind of show those larger operators, especially, these are where the gaps are. But it really does start with that single, or that first point of defense, which are those bud tenders, and educating them on cash handling techniques and procedures, whether you have front of the house recyclers, you have front of the house safes, even cash validators. So how is that staff appropriately touching that cash? And then once it gets to the back office, what does that chain of custody look like? Do you have dual controls in place? Obviously, we have monitoring and surveillance as a requirement for opening a dispensary. But what does that look like once it goes from that initial transaction, or that initial transition from purchasing of product to deposit preparation in the back of the house? And so being able to evaluate, how long does it take how long does it take an employee to prepare that cash for a till, for register preparation? How long does it take to break that down at the end of a shift and prepare that for either storage or deposit? How many exposure points are there in that process? How many opportunities is positioned for theft, and how much money is going out the back door? So really being able to write in those SOPs and those standard practices, but being on site to train them and really cement it as a practice, not just a theoretical, this is in my training manual, or some great companies do online trainings, which is great, right? But how much are we retaining? And I'm a creature of, I need to learn it and then practice it. Like when we were in school, right? When we were studying for a test, like writing it down, and that repetition and cementing it in the brain is very much same is applied in that retail environment. Like, let's talk about it. Let's train on it. I'll do, first shift trainings rather, and then I'll come and do second shift trainings, and then end of shift closings, and just being able to watch the process and then know that we have implemented proper techniques and proper processes to ensure that we're minimizing the exposure and, most importantly, the risk of handling the cash. And where I show a large ROI with my clients and those license holder is how much money I'm saving them on time that their staff was taking to manage cash, right? Again, counting down the drawers, preparing the drawers for shifts, preparing deposits. Like, sometimes if they were not deploying technologies, something as simple as a tabletop counter, right? That could take an hour plus sometimes. And if I can get that down to under 30 minutes, we're winning, we're showing an ROI, we're showing labor and savings. And now we're allowing that staff from a retail perspective to allow them to focus on other areas of the business, other areas of the retail operation, customer experience, customer engagement, education, product training. Let's free up some time to give back to other areas of the operation.
Agreed. That speaks to my efficiency brain and love. So Jen, I want to touch on something you just mentioned. You talked about cash validation, and tell me a little bit about what you recommend for your clients. Is it those, I don't even know what they're called actually, the machines you put the bill through? Do you prefer that they all have one of the markers at their register? What would you recommend from an efficiency and what's the word I'm looking for? Accuracy standpoint?
Accuracy. That is a great question. And I recommend both because it depends on where your devices are installed. So if you have a safe in the back of the house, the last thing your bud tender is going to do is run to the back of the house to validate a bill. So you can validate those bill acceptors when you're utilizing a device, a teller cash recycler or a safe, a smart safe. They have those readers, but at the front of the house, at that transaction point with the customer and the cashier, the marker will suffice. They also have bill validators that are smaller, more I say personal, but free. They're not part of a larger unit, so you can quickly validate a bill using a piece of equipment that almost like your license scanner. Right, a smaller device. So I, at the very least, they should have that damn marker. Is the damn marker the best, line of defense? No, but it's something and it's better than nothing. Same with my tabletop counters. I'm recommending having those. Let's say your safe goes down or say your equipment goes down. At least you have those as a backup to quickly to quickly count that cash, because it's going to take you a lot of time if you're like 1, 2, 3. But I also recommend a manual and then verifying it with a piece of equipment. It really just depends on the cash volume of said operation. But yeah, I think the marker at minimum, and then a piece of equipment back of house. If you're a larger operation, you probably have equipment deployed in the back of the house for your back office operations or your cash vault room. So you should definitely have some sort of electronic validator also as part of your process.
Perfect.
Good question.
Thank you. Let's go backwards a little bit. We talked a little bit before about banking and how it's not accessible and why they have to be in their cars and that's not safe. It's still one of the biggest hurdles for license holders across the country. So how do you support clients in gaining and maintaining compliant financial relationships, and what shifts do you see coming in the future? I don't want to say coming with rescheduling, because I truly need to believe inside of me it will deschedule. I could be totally wrong, but I just need to, the altruistic piece of me needs to believe that. So we'll just say that future instead of rescheduling.
So, there has already been shifting in banking and banking accessibility since 2018 when I first started in the space. So that's exciting, right? That gives me promise for what is about to happen. And just from a safety, perspective, like, you talk about safe banking and safer, like we're not even going to get into that because that has nothing to do with the origin of the word safe banking. It's all for the bigger entities and the bigger banks. So there's a reason why that, gained 2 steps forward, 5 steps back. But from a banking, access to banking, I'm excited about what it looks like, and more financial institutions coming online to bank cannabis related businesses. And my job is really to make those operators bank ready. So say they do not have a financial institution partner yet. I have a network of cannabis friendly FIs that I work with. And then even if I don't work with, but maybe it's like a regional limitation, they need to have someone that's maybe, I don't know, we used Tacoma, Washington earlier. So Washington, right? And so, but being able to position them to be bank ready and really getting their financial house in order. I actually worked with a legacy operator a couple years ago in New Jersey, and he came to me, he's like, Jen, I need banking. Well, let's get you bank ready. Let's get your financials in order. Like if I'm putting my name, if I'm endorsing you as a potential a prospective client for this bank, like I need to make sure all of your ducks are in a row. So he took like 6 months to get his books in order, right? And again, going from legacy to going to regulated is a big hurdle. And I applaud those folks that, have all the wisdom and the knowledge from the cultivation and the operation, all of those systems. Like, let's be honest, they were doing it first and they were doing it pretty damn well. But now to be a player, to bring those expertise over to the regulated market, they got to do some things to make themselves above board. And so he did. He went and he got all of his books together from the logistics side to the sales side, his ordering platform, the whole shebang. And I was able to make sure that I was reducing the risk and the volatility of him as a potential client for these banks and getting him ready to be banked and getting him accepted with fewer limitations and fewer hurdles. And, when we talk about getting them bank ready, that comes with those SOPs, that comes with secure transportation of cash. What practices or equipment will we deploy? So getting all of those components and minimizing the risk tolerance level that they would be and how they'd be positioned and viewed as being banked by those financial institutions. As for rescheduling, it will bring some normalization to this space. I think it would, especially with how banks have to do their underwriting and SARS reporting. So there'll be some freedom from the FI side of that with rescheduling or descheduling. So that is exciting. Will it happen in the next few years? Optimistically, probably not. So we'll have to kind of maintain the trajectory that we're on now. But again, the exciting part is that more and more financial institutions are coming online and making banking accessible. That's the first component. But going back to the transportation piece, having a footprint from a CIT, a cash and transit provider, being able to bank some of those rural areas. I mean, I've had farmers in New York that are 4 hours away from a bank that they can't get an armored transportation provider up in that market to transport their cash. So along with the banking is going to come the secure cash and transit piece. And again, more and more CIT cash and transit providers are coming online and more partnering with the financial side of financial industry to be able to make that accessible and that secure, safe transit of cash, taking it away from their employees and their staff having to transport it. Hopefully that answered your question.
It did. Let's switch gears just a little bit. You are a frequent contributor on platforms like Cannabis Media, and that's actually how I got to meet you, which I loved in New York a year or two ago. Cannabis Media tracks operator data and licensing trends. So tell me how you use tools like that and how other license holders or ancillary businesses should use tools like that to guide your client work and stay ahead of those emerging issues.
So this is my favorite question. It actually gave me goosebumps. So thank you for asking, because Cannabis Media is part of my cannabis journey. As a sole entrepreneur starting my consulting, I was here in Florida, right? So I was keeping busy with opportunities in Florida, right? But we have Trulieve in the state of Florida. That is the largest MSO, next to maybe Curaleaf in the country. So how was I able to scale myself and my reach across the country just being in the state of Florida and only being able to go to so many conferences and make so many phone calls? And so I was introduced to Cannabis Media, which is a licensing platform, a database, if you will, that houses all of that information for all of the licensed operators across the country and all legal nations. So even from a global perspective now. And so I was leveraging Cannabis Media as a lead generating tool to scale my business. And I cannot give enough thanks and appreciation to how Cannabis Media helped me launch my business, or scale my business, I should say. But now I'm affiliated with them. I help with their banking and compliance component, because traditionally, over the last 10 years. They started in 2013. Traditionally, they were only serving the ancillary market or selling to the ancillary market. So people like myself or nutrients companies and lighting companies and ancillary providers to get access for lead generating and marketing. But over the years, they have really built out their offering to provide a lot of industry data. So operators can actually get free access to the platform through our operator hub, and they can get industry data and competitive information and M&A activity. So it's really being leveraged from a larger capacity now than it was 13 years ago. And what I get to do is, because I speak that bank language, I speak compliance, that regulation, they brought me on board to help kind of stand that side of the business up and really helping financial institutions utilize cannabis media for rapid verification of licenses, making sure they're engaging with the good actors, not the unlicensed folks. When is their license expiring, up for renewal? So for insurance folks, that's really important information. Rather than going just to the regulator data or website, they have all of this information baked into one tool, news, negative news, violations. So I was able to be an informed solicitor of those businesses because I knew what was going on. So I was making lemonade out of lemons. So if there was something in the news that was negative around like cash being seized at state lines, or, if I'm a packaging company, right, violations of like tamper evident packaging, and I could use that to have a curated entry to how I could help provide a solution to a challenge that they were having. So that's how I liked utilizing cannabis media. I still utilize cannabis media to this day, and being part of their team has really allowed me to share with others who don't know what cannabis media does, because they have been successfully building out this database and this platform for the last 10 plus years. And so excited to be able to go to conferences and participate in those. And then I'm also part of other associations, right? Those are so cannabis media and Cannabis Cash Consultants, like that's what puts food on on the table for my family, right? The roof over my head. But I have passion projects. So passion projects like, and I might be jumping ahead, Chelsea. But like the Florida Cannabis Action Network, doing work at the state level with the government, like that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's where the work gets done. So working towards, getting bills passed, access to the plant for veterans, free veterans cards in the state of Florida, which we're still a medical state. What does that look like as we try to convert to get recreational passed in 2026? So being part of those conversations with the House of Representatives, with our senators, like it's been, I'm getting goosebumps again, a game changer. And the work that I get to do at the government level, whole different perspective, whole different conversation. And back to the educating piece, educating these, I'll be PC about it, people in Tallahassee that don't know what they don't know and don't know what this medicine is doing to help people. Or, if I live in Tennessee and I'm traveling to Florida for a family vacation, I don't have reciprocity. I can't bring my medicine across state lines. So now I'm committing a crime because I want access to my medicine and I have to cross state lines with it. So like all of those things that we don't think about on a day to day, that work is really done at the state level and in Washington. So that's part of my passion project here in Florida. And then another organization, just to give props to, that when I started in 2018, really helped build my brand in the industry and familiarize myself with the industry and who the players were, was my affiliation with the Cannabis Lab, law, accounting, and business organization, and participating in local events that happen in my backyard and across the state of Florida, and engaging with those stakeholders, with MSOs that operate here in Florida, other ancillaries. It's a professional cannabis networking organization that's been around for 8 or 9 years. And so I really give not only thanks to Cannabis Media, but thanks to the C-Lab organization for helping me get my footing and knowing how to navigate. And, they talk about, when I was managing banks and credit unions, they talk about that being a very relationship-driven industry, the banking side. Shit. Cannabis is 10x that, right? Like you talk about relationships being important. It has taken me several, at this point, right? It's so great to see those seeds, not to sound cliche, right? But those seeds that I planted in 2018, 2019, 2022, like they're finally flowering, right? That was a long grow season. And I just am so thankful, again, to my affiliations with those organizations that have helped me plant those seeds and cultivate those relationships and give me credibility and build credibility and build awareness about what I do. It's those platforms and those organizations that have given me that opportunity. And with my experience on the business side, bringing some legitimacy to the state of Florida and the business aspect of what the cannabis industry is doing in the state of Florida. So I know I just went off on a tangent and a rabbit hole, but that shit gets me worked up and excited. And so I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to those associations that I'm affiliated with. And it helped me build who I am today in the industry.
I welcome the tangent. And honestly, I think that's why you and I resonate with each other so well and seem to just attract towards each other at every event that we're at, because we both understand that corporate business speak, but we also are consumers and we understand cannabis and the plant and what it's doing. And we're able to kind of marry those two for the policymakers, the business owners that may not consume and understand their bud tenders. And I think that that's really important and it's special. And everything you just said on that tangent was valid as fuck. And I really appreciate you going on it. So thank you.
Thanks for going on that journey with me. It's so funny. And when we're at conferences together, we're like, okay, we got to go to work now. Like we have so much synergy. And so we're like, okay, we should go network and like meet new people that we don't know. Like, okay, and 5, break. And then we'll go. And then we always like find each other back, like in passing in the bathroom or like, It's just like our energy, like the universe like brings us back at the most appropriate time. So that's something special too, my dear.
I agree. Let's talk a little bit more of a personal level. What's one financial or compliance risk that keeps you up at night within cannabis? What's something you wish every operator understood about handling cannabis cash?
So I think we touched on it a little bit earlier. It's like that 11th hour thought. It's not that proactive thought. So what keeps me up at night is that operator thinking that their processes are secure and their staff is safe, right? And so I think that when they have that kind of false sense of security, that things around them are just running fine, everything's fine until it's not, right? And so like I said earlier, it's going to cost you more in time, effort, stress, fear, if we're not proactive in that. So that really does keep me up at night, especially like if I'm working with an operator and I get the no, which how can you say no to this? But anyway, I do get no's, it's fine. But you know what? They always come back because no is just not right now. But that's what keeps me up at night. Like my concern for their staff, my concern for their customer engagement, that employee satisfaction, that customer satisfaction. Like, hey, that customer just gave the bud tender $200 for a $50 order, and they only got $50 in change. And so is that bartender pocketing that money, or did that customer get gypped, or where is that impact point, and where does that negative, that shrapnel of that engagement occur and lie? And so that keeps me up at night, that false sense of security, not being able to like, what did I do wrong that didn't convey the importance of X, Y, and Z when it comes to cash handling? And I get, like, there's a cost to managing cash, but there's also a cost to, I think I might have said this earlier, but next to the people and the product in your 4 walls of your business, that cash is the most expensive and riskiest thing that you are touching. And so how can we get processes in place to secure the safety of not only the cash, but the staff as well? So that's kind of what keeps me up at night. Maybe sometimes the no's will keep me up for like a couple hours and then I get over it. And then it's on to the next, right? That's the nature of the business. But I get to educate people about what they don't know around cash management. And hopefully I left some bits of knowledge that, hey, it'll keep them up at night thinking about, oh, wait, maybe I do need to do this. And that's when I get that phone call, however much period of time later. So, yeah.
I don't want to speak for you, but one of my favorite parts about what I get to do is education. And I feel like that's one of your favorite parts as well. Obviously, getting paid, making money, building businesses that are profitable and can stay around for a while are great. But watching the light bulb come on during the education is honestly just so rewarding. And it's the most enjoyable part.
Could not agree more. Like, okay, listen, I don't want to be at the opening shift at 6 a.m. as they're prepping their drawers for opening at 8 a.m. or whatever. But listen, I'm bringing donuts. We're having a good old time in the break room. We're building rapport, and that goes a long way. In my days working in Fortune 500, service-oriented companies, I had profound relationships with the operations side. So the fact that I spoke that language as a sales professional and got along with the operations folks and spoke that language and was in the weeds with them, right? So I live in Florida, right? It's 110 degrees in the I was going to say in the winter, in the summer, and it's humid, and we were picking up dirty, nasty kitchen towels from like a Hooters with like nasty chicken wing sauce all over them with maggots, right? But I am in there with that driver. I'm picking up those dirty towels. I'm getting them on the truck. We're unloading them. We're getting them to the sweet old lady in the back that's putting them in the washer and folding them. And when I needed something, you bet your ass that I was able to get that XYZ done because I had that relationship with the other side of the house. And I bring that passion for bridging the gap between ops and sales and implementation and to what I do today. And building that relationship with that staff at every operator that I go to is so important because that's going to last. That's going to be impactful versus just watching a training on a video, right? So I love training. To your point, Chelsea, it's just something that is embedded in me. It's naturally in my DNA, and that's the most rewarding part when I get a thank you for doing that. And another thing that kind of keeps me up at night would really like if they're not building out those financial and those compliance systems from the jump. If they're ready to open location 2 and location 3, you can only put so much icing on top of mud, right? So that's eventually going to cave in. And so knowing that someone is doing something the incorrect way, or they could be doing it better. They may not view it as incorrect, but they could be doing it better. That's something that also keeps me up at night. And I hope that I get the chance to really build something that's going to last. And that's systems that are duplicatable. I mean, you do this as a retail whisperer, right? We build systems that are replicatable and duplicatable and train the trainer so that you've left your thumbprint on that operator and you know that you made a difference and we've made them a safer, better environment to work and play in.
For everyone listening, I want to just reinforce kind of what Jennifer said, because I think it's a huge cornerstone of my business as well, is integrate with the staff, buy the donuts with them, show up at 6 a.m. That is how you get buy-in. It's why I still talk to multiple staff out of the 120 licenses I've been in over the last 12 years. And it's why people remember you. It's why license holders then tell people to hire you again or hire you to use you to do what they hired you for. If you have buy-in, people will remember it. People will actually resonate with what you're educating them on and they will action it. If you just talk at them and there is no synergy, it will go in one ear and out the other, and maybe 20% of it will be actioned. 100%. But if you can integrate with your staff and level with them and become a peer while also being seen as their leader, you will be successful every time.
I echo that 100%. Yep.
So you have shown up at cannabis media events, MJ Biz, PBC, C Lab, and more. How have those communities helped shape your consulting approach? And what do you learn from other operators out in the field?
Such a great question. Well, first of all, I love going to all of those events, right? It's from the moment I began in the industry, I wanted to put myself where cannabis related conversations were being had with the folks that were having those conversations and those decision makers and those C-suite folks, or even just the bud tenders or the managers, right? Because, if you're planting those seeds at the top and you're planting those seeds at the bottom, they're all going to come together eventually. And so creating those relationships, right? We talked about education and training, but those relationships and that relationships really being a 10x factor in our industry. And so I love going to those events and meeting new people, and cannabis is ever changing, right? So the longevity in cannabis is like, we talk about being in the industry. And whenever I'm talking with someone that's been at a cannabis, indirect ancillary or indirect company of cannabis, and I've been there, 6 years, 7 years, that's like 100 cannabis years, right? Same with cannabis media, right? The fact that they've been around going on 11 years, that's like 100 cannabis dog years. And so there's something to be said about that. And it's something to, put a feather in your cap about. And so I just love being involved in those conversations, at those conferences, learning and staying on top of innovation and trends and how can I add value? That's the biggest thing. Like, I never want to leave one of those conferences going, damn, that was a waste of my time, right? And I never do. I always try to to find the value, a connection. It doesn't hurt when, you're being awarded for like a PBC, the top business solutions leader for 2024, going for 2025. And so just things like that to be acknowledged by your peers. And speaking to that PBC conference, that is payments, banking, and compliance. Those are my people. We speak the same language, right? So like an MJ Biz, it's the macro, right? It's the macro of, it's the EGOT, if you will, as all of the functions of the cannabis ecosystem. And so, yes, you should always go to MJ Biz. It's a great experience. It's great exposure. But getting to a micro level, to a conference like a PBC or the the Association of Cannabis Banking, which I'm going out to next week, we speak that language. So if you can find a niche conference that aligns with your areas of expertise, that's just going to help build your brand even more. And to your question, as I go off on another tangent, being at those conferences really did help build my brand, right? It did help build who I am in the industry and what I do and who I align myself with and make those connection points. Like my superpower, if I were to take the shirt off, you would see an S, not for Superman, but for super connector, right? Like I connect people and I love doing that organically. If only I could monetize that. I'm sure there's a way. We'll get back to that another conversation another day. But it's truly what I love to do, because if I find a need and an opening for an introduction, I get to walk around those conference floors and make those connections and stay on top of what's going on in the industry, especially those niche, those specialized conferences that you're aligned with people that are speaking that same language. It's so powerful and so important. And then it's always fun. Let's be honest. I mean, we really get to do some pretty awesome shit, and it's exciting, and we get to engage with some pretty awesome and dope people. And like, that's the additional benefit. That's like the icing on top of the cake. So again, I'm always all over the place. We're always the ships in the night passing at those conferences, but it's really great to just be where cannabis related conversations are being had, listen to panels. That's where, you get the education, get those nuggets of intel, see what's going on. And then just to be recognized by your peers, especially planting those seeds of over all these years is something that I really enjoy, and getting to see friends. It's almost like a high school reunion when you get to go to those conferences too. So, and there's work to be done. But I love being able to go to those conferences and just being part of the community. We are really a community, and we're all like-minded, and we're all advocating for the same thing, which is, access to the plant, the business aspects of it, the cultivate, like all of it. So who doesn't love going to the conferences?
I agree. I completely agree. I would say cannabis is unique in that it's such a community that even when we are doing outings or fun things or different things like that, not just sitting at a boardroom table talking,
right,
we still get a ton of business done. And I think that is something that's so different about our industry. And I would also say, like you said about the conferences, it's important to go and those things like that. I think our industry is different that way. In food and beverage, it's not as important to go to those major conferences or be at those smaller niche conferences. But in our industry, it is quite different. It's important to be present at MJ Biz and MJ Unpacked if you are a retailer. C Lab if you're in that. Same with PBC. I'm super excited to go to PBC, by the way, this year. I have never been. And so I just wanted to touch on that, because I think that's sometimes it gets lost in our industry until people are like, oh shit, it actually is important that I'm there. And it's oddly important. And I sometimes don't love that it's so important, if I'm being honest, but I think I would rather just acknowledge that it is.
So funny you say that, because especially if there's like a season, right? It's like the award season, or it's the conference season. It's like back to back to back, and by the end you're just and it's important to stay healthy and take your vitamins and all the things, because it is taxing on you. And I always go into MJ after a little bit of a lull in conferences, going, I got to go to MJ again. And I'm always thrilled that I go every year, because it is so rewarding. And I will say, for one of the people early on when I started in the industry, he held the door open for me, right? He held the door open, and he's like, Jen, you want to put yourself verbatim what I shared with you a moment ago when you asked this question. You want to put yourself where those cannabis-related conversations are being had with the folks that are having those conversations, and make yourself present, continue to show up, build your brand, build your name, and that's how things really did start to manifest. And it's funny because you are the the retail whisperer. Well, I've been affectionately referred to as the Cannabis Cash Queen. And when I talk about cash management and cash related services, it gets lost in transition, like in and 1 year out the other door. What does she do? Like cannabis cash who? And so I was doing a podcast, and this woman on the other end goes, "Girl, you're just like a cannabis cash queen." And I was like, holy shit, ding, ding, ding. Like bells went off, sirens, fireworks. And I was like, I went right there. I got the Instagram, I got the LinkedIn, I got the website, the URL, because that truly encompasses in a quick delivery of who I am and what I do as a brand, not necessarily my company, but as a brand, right? The Cannabis Cash Queen. And you know, you're not going to freaking forget Cannabis Cash Queen. As ridiculous as it sounds and as audacious as it sounds, where's my fucking tiara? Right? Like I am. And I love that. And I love that it was like appointed to me as a title and not something I created, which is even the best part, because I'm a little vain, but I'm not that vain. And but I just was like, yes, I'm the Cannabis Cash Queen, and that shit sticks, right? And just like when I go in and I talk about cash, right? You know, cash is dirty and sticky and smelly, and so is coin. Well, so is cannabis, right? It's green, it's sticky, it can be smelly, right? So it's like so harmonious with what I do and what I get to talk about, and I get to like insert little jokes there, and I've kind of like come up with all these like sayings and innuendos as I've gotten more embraced and kind of find my footing and finally calibrated what my true offering is to the space.
I love that that's how you got dubbed that. Because when my client dubbed me the Dispensary Whisperer in 2016, I was like, oh, yes. I like that. Thank you.
Right. And it makes sense. And it's such a badge of honor too. Like the thing, we're creating great things in our perspective lanes. And I love that we were kind of given those that name, that kind of slogan, however you want to say it, just organically, and it's because of the work we do. So kudos to us, girl. Kudos to us, because we're
great. Awesome. Okay, back to the questions.
Oh yeah.
Oh, actually, I do want to give a tidbit for the listeners. She mentioned being healthy. My secret weapon is oil of oregano capsules every day when I'm traveling, but when I'm in the actual city, I double up the capsules, and that's how I stay healthy.
So I wasn't going to go down my regimen, but it's pre-game, right? So you want to make sure you're dosing up your antimicrobial, your antibacterial, like all of the vitamin C's, the D's ahead of time, and then your mulberry and all of that fun stuff. Like I have a compound capsule I take too. So yes, so leading up to it, so you want to pre-dose, during, and then after, and then your hand sanitizer. So, and if you're gonna partake in the smoke circle, that's all dandy. We've got it's called the Tallahassee toke, and you actually just go through the circle there, right? So you're not putting your lips on it, or we even have like little caps now. But anyway, so the Tallahassee toke, I learned that. So you want to fuck up the rotation and be not participate, but how can we do it healthy with this communal group of coming together and having like a ceremonial experience almost, right? So you want to partake, that's part of the fun of it, but staying healthy while you're doing it. That's the mom in us.
Tidbit for everybody from Jen and I, outside of the compliance banking.
Compliance and health. There you go.
With cashless solutions expanding and federal access still uncertain, and probably will be for a while, where do you see cannabis financial operations heading in the next 3 to 5 years, and how do you start preparing your clients now?
So we're at a pivotal moment, right? We're getting more and more digital options. I talked a little bit about that gray area with cashless ATMs. Some people are taking credit cards, which, let's be honest, how are they doing that with legally riding on the rails of Visa, MasterCard, Amex? I always advise people like, well, I get this is convenient for your customers. What is the impact of being shut down, right? What is the impact of not being able to take any sort of digital tenders? So in 3 to 5 years, operations will have to maybe shift towards more of a hybrid approach. Cash will always be present. Cash will be king for our entire lifetime. But will there be an impact to the cash and the volume of cash? Absolutely. But also think like, and this kind of goes back to the early days of cannabis, like we don't want to be tracked, right? I worked for a federal entity that was insured by a federal organization. Like I didn't want my name in a record base or database that I was purchasing cannabis. So I would always pay in cash. And to this day, as a Cannabis Cash Queen, she's still transacting cash because that's my business. So so we will have to take a hybrid approach, and the ability to take digital transactions, digital wallets, tap and pay, that is coming. And that's going to be great, right, for the industry from a security perspective, minimizing the amount of cash. And so as from Cannabis Cash consultants, we're prepared to have that conversation, and we do every day, right? Because with every cash related conversation is a digital conversation, because you have to be able to offer both. And so, you know, that is coming. So to your question, more of a hybrid approach. What can you legally take in the interim while rescheduling or descheduling is occurring or on the roadmap to occur? So, you know, being able to speak to both. What else was I going to say about the cashless piece? You know, different software, you know, compliance software, making sure that the POSs are talking to the cash devices, that they're talking to the merchant service device. So systems in place that will be able to provide insight and visibility to the data, that transaction data. So again, being able to know that that digital component is coming online more and more and is becoming an offering, but again, having processes in place, that's really, I think, where I see things coming in the next 3 to 5 years. And it will be good for the industry once we have more digital options, again, from a security, keeping less cash. It's vulnerable, right? It creates vulnerabilities and risk and for an operator, and then time it takes to manage and the cost it takes to manage in the cash. So I am looking forward to more of some digital offerings being available, and the legalities of it, like a legal digital offering, and the convenience of tap and pay. I use tap and pay every day at the grocery store or at, you know, the Wawas or whatever, but I'm still paying cash when I go to the dispensary.
I love that. Absolutely love that little tidbit. As we kind of wrap up, tell me what you are most proud of in your work so far, and what gives you hope for the future of cannabis finance, which I think you might have kind of already answered. So if we want to stick on what's you're most proud of, that's totally fine.
So from a business perspective, you know, I am proud of being able to help operators, right? Give visibility to the blind spot, because if you're coming from traditional retail, it's not always a plug and play system, right? It is a little different. So being able to provide insight, knowledge, expertise, and that educational piece, like that is what I am proud of. What I get to do is help operators and license holders put in play practical practices around compliant, safe, and secure cash handling that not only keeps their customers safe, but keeps their staff safe. You know, we hear about robberies and attempted robberies and things of that nature happening all the time. So if I can minimize the impact and what is walking out the back door or the front door if there's a robbery, right? Helping keep those folks safe is what I'm most proud of from a business perspective. And that I found my niche. So personally, like I'm proud of the network that I've created. I'm proud that I've been able to bring my experience in before the cannabis industry into the cannabis industry, right? Legitimizing it, commercializing it, standardizing it. Those are a lot of INGs, right? But like they're all important, and bringing that legitimacy to it and that education, right? I love that I've created this network. I've met amazing people like yourself. Like just the people are amazing, and creating a name for myself. Whenever I tell people I'm in cannabis, like, oh, that's cool, like flower touching. I'm like, nope, it's the other dirty green thing, the cash, right? So being able to carve out something so specialized and something so niche that I haven't heard of anybody else doing it to the level of what I do. And so that is just so rewarding. And I'm creating a name for myself in an industry that will be in the history books one day, similar to prohibition and alcohol. We are doing that thing here, and we're a part of it. And that is effing awesome. And to be recognized for that work I'm doing is just like another feather in the cap, like being awarded, provider of the year, being, featured in Cannabis and Tech magazine, being asked to speak. Like that is personally what I know that I've been doing the right work and planting those right seeds to have all of those those things come to fruition. And so I'm so thankful for the work I get to do, thankful for the people I get to meet, the places I get to go. And now we're going to a global, right? We're shifting to a global perspective. So that's exciting. I got my MBA in international business. So how will that parlay into the global cannabis market? So like that's next, I think, for me. And I don't know if that was a question on our agenda, but that's what's next for me, is like the globalization of cannabis.
Thank you for actually bringing that up. I didn't know you had your MBA in international business, so that's actually exciting, and I'm interested to see how you kind of mesh those together. And I will be happy to join you in Europe.
Yes. You know, it's so funny. When I was getting my MBA in 2019, whatever it was, my first presentation to my cohort, like very first project, front of the class, et cetera, was about cannabis. And it was about my mom having MS and the medicine and how it helped her. And so talk about premature for cannabis conversation. I was premature for the cannabis conversation with Brinks, right? With bringing cannabis, secure transit for the industry. And then here I am, day one, my first big project of my MBA class, talking about cannabis. And now, motherfuckers, look what I'm doing. So it's so cool to kind of see how I've cautiously and professionally broached the conversation on cannabis. And now look what we're doing. So couldn't be more excited about that.
Same. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being one of those people that brings some professionalism to cannabis and normalization.
Yeah.
So now that we're done with all the questions, tell us where listeners can find you, LinkedIn, website, and anywhere else you want them to connect with Cannabis Cash Consultants and the amazing Jennifer Makris.
Well, please connect with me. I would love to get connected and talk more. I can be found on LinkedIn at Jennifer Makris, and my website is Cannabis Cash Consultants. My IG is Cannabis Cash Queen, but I need to work on my IG game, so it's a little dull, so don't judge me when you go to request me. So working on that. I'm a little resigned to the social media thing, and I know that it's a necessary evil. So give me some grace. But yes, find me there, find me on LinkedIn, find me on my website. Let's get connected. And thank you so much, Chelsea, for this platform and this opportunity. I love you. I love the Beard Bros team. And so just thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I love being able to talk retail and cash, but I also just love getting a chance to sit with you and kind of dialogue back and forth. So thank you. And thank you, listeners, for listening. My name is Chelsea Mulligan, the Dispensary Whisperer. Please find me on LinkedIn as Chelsea Mulligan. Instagram is the Dispensary Whisperer. And I also have chelseamulligan.com. Make sure you go connect with Jennifer on LinkedIn and follow Cannabis Cash Consulting, as they continue to be the go-to resource for innovative cash management solutions. Jennifer will be taking the stage at the Association of Cannabis Banking Symposium later this month, and will also be speaking at MJ BizCon in 2025. I will be in that audience. Please make sure you go follow Beard Bros Farms on Instagram. And if you're in California, Missouri, or Massachusetts, find their amazing RSO Dablicator and tincture products at a dispensary near you. And while we all wish we could sesh with the Beard Bros in person on the daily, I know I do because I miss it, that unfortunately isn't in a reality for all of us. There is a Friday Sesh Live coming, so make sure you get with Brian Holler and get your brand in front of a ton of great networking. Also sign up for their Friday Sesh newsletter, which brings you the most current and authentic cannabis news every Friday. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.